Mr. Rainwater.
Hey, Joe.
I got some problem.
All right, what's going on?
I got multiple problems, but that's for another day. I have one problem that we're doing. We're trying something new tonight. We're calling this the workshop. Frequently, and I'll only speak for myself, when I'm working on a project, I'll run into a problem or problems.
Sure.
Which I think is part of art, right? It's just, you know, creative problem solving the entire time. That is literally what you are doing, is figuring out solutions to problems to shape whatever it is you're doing to do what you want it to do or say or whatever, be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
I, no secret, am prepping Haunted for production later this summer. And right now I am still tinkering on the script, which is not good. Don't get me wrong. I'm still doing things in other time. I'm doing camera tests. I'm doing lighting things, sound things, yada, yada, yada.
Getting close to production, though.
Yeah.
Getting super close.
It's very important that I have nailed down what I'm shooting before I get on set to shoot it. Yeah. I don't want to be one of those things. And so I have a problem with one of the scenes early on in my script. And not gonna lie, since the moment I've written this bad boy, from the first draft till now, this scene has always bothered me. And part of it is I think I'm overthinking myself, or maybe I'm scared. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but let me break down really quick. So I don't know if you have you ever gotten around to reading the Save the Cat stuff, or are you just absorbing it every time I spew my love about it?
I'm absorbing it from you somewhat, but I would say I'm definitely not literate necessarily in the model.
Okay. So the opening beat of the Save the Cat structure is the opening image, where you set the tone, you kind of introduce your character, all that kind of stuff. The very next beat that you usually hit is what's called theme stated, which is what we've been talking about a lot lately, the thematic premise of your work.
Right.
And usually, like Blake Snyder explains it in this, that usually another character will state it to your main character in the form of a question or a statement, like, you know, be careful what you wish for, or, you know, shit like that. And at that point in time, your main character doesn't really care, doesn't understand what's being said to them, but you are kind of prepping your audience to be looking for this thematic key, if you will, running through your script. Now, in a way, I know what my theme is, right? It's the tagline that I plastered out all over everything in a different form. So the tagline for Haunted is, "Don't you want to know?" which is an inviting question right off the bat. So, like, if you even slightly have any kind of interest after you read the premise of Haunted, which is about a woman who goes on a Halloween haunt, and it's rumored to blur the lines between reality and like horror fantasy, like werewolves, vampires, all that kind of fun shit. Yeah. And the question is kind of inviting that question. Well, is this real? So in my particular theme stated scene, I have the main character and her best friend, her roommate, and they're kind of discussing what they've just done. So the opening scene of the movie is, spoiler alert, Halloween night, and they are terrorizing trick-or-treaters in their front yard, and they're really good at it. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very elaborate setup and this kind of stuff. And the main character, Taylor, is taking great joy in scaring the shit out of these kids, which one does on Halloween. That's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And so when I get to the second scene, you know, I have a lot of things going on. I need to kind of get some of the plot moving where we're not jumping into the actual haunt yet. We're not even talking about it yet, but we are kind of starting to discuss the underlying current of the theme that's going on here. And I have stated it several different ways. Like, I've had my best friend character tell her, you know, you don't know everything, right? Which is kind of a thing where my character is kind of a know-it-all. Like, she, you know what I mean? Like, and then like I've like been looking up like Socrates and all this kind of stuff where there's quotes about, you know, ignorance, and I'm trying to figure out the right way to frame my theme where it's not bashing the audience over the head, like flat out exposition. Sure. Hey, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. This is what you want to look for. But at the same time, I want to make sure it's there so that the audience can understand and that it's still fun. Because I feel like in this scene, it's very flat. And there's, they always talk about adding conflict to scene to make sure that it really drives. One character wants one thing, one character wants another. And in this particular instance, the best friend character has set up the main character on a blind date with her boyfriend's friend. And my main character is just trying to get out of it. You know what I mean? Like, she just wants to stay at home and watch, black and white horror movies or whatever like that for the rest of Halloween night. And the other girlfriend's like, oh, I set this up and I was part of your stupid terrorizing the kids thing. You owe me, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how I can find myself getting happy with it. And I'm curious to know if this was a problem for you or questions that you might have that might help me unlock it. But how do I get to a point where I can just say, oh, that's good. Okay, I can leave that here and I can move on now. Because everywhere else in the script, everything else, I feel like I've hit that beat just fine. But this particular scene is driving me nuts because, I feel like I have to do so many different things to set up things in the story. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything hinges on this one scene in order for the rest of the film to kind of really hold weight.
Yeah, so, I mean, having not read the entirety of the script and only having read, I think, maybe the first 4 pages.
Yeah, what I posted on Twitter.
Sure. Yeah. Certainly in the scene that you have in those first 4 pages, I get a general sort of, what do you call, like a synopsis of what's to come in the movie, right? Like,
yeah, I've got that pinned down on a card where basically the opening scene is the entire movie in a nutshell.
Right, right. And I kind of picked that up, and I think that in itself is good, right? Because you're giving the audience their I don't know what you call that, like just a tutorial of what you're about to expect, right?
Okay.
And I don't necessarily know what kind of themes you're going to be going for. You've described some of your themes, but I don't necessarily know in an in-depth way, right, of how it's gonna play out in the movie. But you may want to keep it simple. Is kind of my take on it, and allow that to be elaborated as the movie goes on. Because I think, I don't know, the way that you were talking about it, to me, it sounded like you might be overcooking it a little bit, possibly.
I feel like that is what I'm doing, but it's that uncertainty that I'm feeling where I don't know if I'm overcooking it, undercooking it, or if I've got the right time and temp.
Yeah. I err on the side of, I generally err on the side of, like, I guess undercooking, for lack of a better word. Because what I tend to do in my scripts is just elaborate further as I go on, because it's easier to add than to subtract, right? But I'm in a different situation, right? You're making a piece of art where everything has to be done all at once. I'm adding Lego bricks one at a time, right? That to me, it's very easy to add on, because I can just be like, oh, and by the way, here are my thoughts about this or this topic, for an episode, to just further add more depth to the story. You're not in that same position. You have to have it all set, right? So I would say, if you have stuff that elaborates on it later in the story, don't worry about it so much at the beginning, because at the beginning anyway, you're just trying to get people hooked into the story anyway, right? And to me, if your hook is you're making a horror movie and you're setting up this horror movie as like a haunting kind of setup, you really just want to get, to me, it seems like you really just want to get that down, right? And within the actions of the scene that I've read, I get that idea anyway, without any further elaboration from any of the characters. Now, granted, like, I'm a storyteller, I'm a story writer, so like I'm going to pick that stuff up anyway. I can't necessarily say whether or not that would be the
Joe,
same.
yeah, Joe Blue Collar is gonna pick up on the subtleties.
And that's the thing that that is always a really difficult tightrope to walk, because for the life of me, I always am trying to figure out how to explain stuff to the audience, but not over-explain and not just like spell it out. Because I hate that. Like I hate having to spell out what's going on in the scene. I hate having to spell out like what's happening. I want to give for me, I want to give my not only I want to give them the ability. Not I can't give them the ability, but give them the permission. You know, the opportunity to come into a story and arrive at their own conclusions about what they're pulling in, you know. But that's just my general thing. And I also make stories that are a little bit more obtuse, you know, that kind of go all over the place and they're not like going for the same sort of realm that like I don't know how long the movie's running. I'll assume an hour and a half, but like, you know, like an hour and a half movie where you have to be pretty streamlined, right? You really have to get stuff locked in. So, you know, I guess to state it in another way, I would err on the principle of keep it simple, stupid, you know, like keep it in such a way where you get immediately and within the first 5 minutes what's going to happen in this movie, and you don't need any further explanation beyond that. You know what I mean? I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts in regards to all that, Joe?
Well, everything what you just said, you almost something clicked in my brain, like with one of the first things that you said, which was I'm still in kind of the setup mode where I'm hooking the audience. Like I've got their asses in the seat. Right. Yeah. But if I don't get them to care about what's going to happen, then it's all for naught. It doesn't matter if I've got the theme stated or not. So that was really kind of an eye-opening moment there where I needed a reminder that I need to make them care, or as Blake Snyder calls it, actually saving the cat. The problem here is that the main character just got done terrorizing a 4-year-old.
Right. Hey, well, here's the thing about theme, right? Like theme is so important to a story, but at the same time, it's sort of icing on the cake in a lot of ways, because I mean, as a kid, when I watched Jurassic Park, like I wasn't thinking about what are the themes of Jurassic Park. I was thinking about I can't wait to see some dinosaurs eat some people.
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
That's the theme of Jurassic Park.
to a 12-year-old, yeah.
Right, not just a 12-year-old, for most people watching the movie. And then the theme is something that sort of pops up after more and more viewings, right? Or after, you know, after a couple of days after watching the movie, you start thinking about like all the stuff that happens and what does it mean, right? Because I don't know, like as a kid, like I definitely remember all the important conversation pieces that happen between all the principal characters talking about like what are the ramifications of, you know, this new technology? What are the ramifications of bringing back dinosaurs into the world and all that stuff? And it's interesting when you're a kid, but also you're just like, can we get to the dinosaurs, please? Like, this isn't that interesting to me, you know?
Right.
So, like, I mean, if you're watching a horror movie, you're probably not as interested in the themes as you are into getting into the thrills and chills and all that stuff, right? And the themes are something that sort of come upon later after the viewing or on repeat viewings. And you know, like,
or when you jump on Twitter and someone tells you your opinion is wrong, but yeah.
Right. And you know, so I saw Ambulance not that long ago. And that is a movie where you really don't need to know the theme to get into it. You just need to get into it.
Yeah.
And once you're in, it's just like a roller coaster ride, you know. A roller coaster ride that might go 30 minutes a little over for what I would have liked, but like it was still a good ride, you know. And I bring it up because when we were talking about this, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, what is the theme in Ambulance? Because I know there is one. Like there is stuff that comes up that like in the movie that thing, you know, like I think one of the main thoughts is about like what makes a hero, right? What makes somebody a hero in a situation? Because there's a lot of that movie has a lot of context where it's just like,
Yeah.
you know, oh well, the one brother is good in this light, but also bad in this other light, and then the other brother is bad in a certain light, but there's also like a part of him that wants to be not necessarily good but loved, you know, like there's a human
There's an
human
admirable quality, we'll call it that. Yeah,
there's human dimensions to every character in, well, I don't know if I should say every character, but most of the characters in the movie, and that seems to be like what Ambulance really revolves around, is that this idea of like, well, this is just life for human beings, and it looks like chaos, and you never are, while you can pinpoint good and bad things that people do, you can never necessarily 100% pinpoint what makes them that way, and does that make them, you know,
good or bad,
good or absolutely evil.
It's funny you should mention this, because during the middle of the movie, I leaned over to the guy I was with watching it, and I said to him, I call this the Cobra Kai application. And he looked at me kind of curious, and I'm like, you know what this is? This is when, have you watched Cobra Kai, by the way?
I haven't had the chance to watch it yet.
Cobra Kai, so you've seen the original Karate Kid, right?
Yeah, right. I watched it with, you made me watch it.
Did I?
Yeah, we were roommates.
The original Karate Kid has Johnny Lawrence, the blonde kid who's the bad guy, right?
Sure.
And when the TV show picks up, it's following his life. His character is legitimately stuck in the 80s. Like, he does not know any common vernacular. He doesn't understand social norms of the 2020s. Like, he's completely like oblivious to everything. He's okay boomer personified, right?
Yeah.
The beauty of Cobra Kai, they do not paint a single character in that show as the good guy or the bad guy. Even Daniel, the main character, is painted just as they are. There is no judgment passed on them by the storytellers. Yeah. The judgment is for you. Do you know what I mean? So like, Johnny is very sexist, and you know, in terms of my perception of the way he treats women and stuff like that. But in the show, they play it for laughs because he's a likable character, because you realize he's kind of an idiot in that respect. Like, he doesn't get that. But at the same time, he's got some moral ground where, you know, he is doing noble things, and you admire him for that. And then at the same time, you have Daniel, who was the good guy, the main character of the original Karate Kid franchise. And obviously he was a good guy, right? He was like fighting like for noble causes and this and that. But they also don't shy away from the fact that he has a temper, and he flies off the handle and does things that he shouldn't do. And then he tries to justify them retroactively by, you know, painting himself as a good guy. That's an interesting
character trait to get them too.
Well, but that's the thing, is like, even the evil karate teacher from the original movie, right? He was just very, very stereotypical mustache twirling in the movie. And when he comes back into the show, he's very much that. And then as the seasons go on, you start getting a better look into his character and the shit that he went through with Vietnam, and his relationship to his parents, and the way people treated him. And you start getting a better picture of why he does what he does. And he's almost a very noble good guy in that light. So it's almost like they don't cast judgment, which is very interesting to me as a storyteller, because for the most part, 99% of every movie or TV show I've ever seen in my life, the storytellers cast the judgment on the characters, and you just absorb that and you go along with it. Yep. In Cobra Kai, not at all. They just lay it out the way it is, and you judge how it is for you. And when I was watching Ambulance, I realized it was very much the same thing happening here. You look at Jake Gyllenhaal and you go, all right, he's quote unquote supposed to be the bad guy. Yeah. But I get it. I like him. You know what I mean? Like, he's all right. He's okay. And then at the same time, you got, I I don't know how to pronounce his name or what it is, even off the top of my head, but his black brother.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think his character's name is Will in the movie.
Is it Will? Okay, I only saw it the once, and like you said, it's just explosions and a car chase. But like he's got a very noble cause, right? To do why he's doing what he's doing, and he's got a very noble past, and yet he is the one who puts them in a bigger bad situation by making a bad judgment call at one particular moment.
Right.
And it's very, you know what I mean? Like they don't say, like in any movie, any character who's a bank robber that shoots a cop, like point blank range, evil as fuck. Die hard. You know what I mean? Like evil incarnate if you do that. Like an unarmed police officer, boom, shot him. Point blank range.
Right. And the movie makes a very big point of it too, right? Because it's like, it's the whole way, basically the whole impetus for the movie. Right? Is like, you know, the way that they're getting chased by the LAPD and the FBI and all this other stuff. Yeah. Right. Is largely based on that first part. Although also they robbed a bank, but nevertheless, like.
No, but it amps up because they found out he shot a cop, and it's like. Yeah. But then you when you watch that scene unfold, it was not so black and white. And that's what I loved about it. And I almost want to like spin that into my own storytelling. I don't think it's ready for Haunted, and that would cause a massive rewrite.
No, it's interesting because I feel like Ambulance was Michael Bay attempted to make an art film, you know? And like it kind of has an art film quality to it where it's just like like you're saying, it's not black and white, it's very open to interpretation. The hero of the movie you could say is like at least two different people, if not three different people. You know,
Aziza Gonzalez is like it's like that meme where it's like lawful neutral, lawful good, lawful chaos. Like I don't remember. I don't know how it applies exactly, but that's exactly this movie. Yeah,
and it gives you it just gives you so much room to look at it the way that you want to look at it, right? And so to wrap it kind of back into your original like question that you're having right now in regards to Haunted, but you have a theme hammered down, right, for Haunted?
Pretty much, it can be, you know, spun 1,000 different ways with different words, but
can the theme be? Do you feel like the theme is told through the action that takes place in that first scene? Or does it require more depth or more elaboration to sort of get it across?
It requires a little bit of discussion, a little bit, because I mean, it's exemplified in that opening scene, but at the same time, it's not opened up as a question. Okay. Do you know what I mean? Because for those of you who are listening and have not read the first 4 pages, I don't mind spoiling this for you. The girls, the main characters of the movie, have set up what's called a home haunt on Halloween, where you basically set up, you know, an elaborate kind of haunt type thing. A haunt is like the haunted trails, the haunted houses you go at Halloween where people jump out and scare you and this and that. And they have set one up in their front yard for the trick-or-treaters who come. The best friend stands on the porch and hands out the candy. And the other friend has buried herself underneath one of the little styrofoam gravestones in the front yard. And the one friend on the porch directs the trick-or-treaters and says, there's a treasure of candy buried in under one of these graves. But be careful, my wretched witch sister is hiding there to get you. And one of this little trick-or-treater who's already kind of scared to do this, she gets kind of encouraged by her mother to go and do it. And she starts picking out candy from the graves. And then all of a sudden, inevitably, our main character pops out of the grave and scares her. Now, she runs to her mom's arms. Mom, I'm so scared, yada, yada, yada. Mom comforts her. You'd think that's where it would end for any normal, decent human being, right? On Halloween, ha ha ha, I scared you, it's over. No. Our main character stays, quote unquote, in character as the evil undead witch and follows the little girl to her mom and continues to scare and terrorize her to the point where even mom is like, what is wrong with you? She's like hysterical. Leave her alone. The best friend runs off the porch, stops our main character, is like, what are you doing? Stop, knock it off, blah, blah, blah. The mom and the little trick-or-treater, they run away. And then they realize Halloween is over, the trick-or-treaters are all gone, and that's the end of the scene. So it's kind of like, how far is too far? Playing with the theme of, and the main theme of the movie is pretty much like, I know everything because I've experienced everything. Nothing really scares me anymore, but I wish it did. Right? And that's kind of like the idea. That's what our main character is chasing, that high, that adrenaline rush of being scared that you can feel as a kid, thinking that monsters are real. But when you get older, you realize, no, not really. And so, I've toyed with the whole thing of like, do I make it like the second scene a discussion about atheism? Right? Because that kind of plays into the idea that, there are no gods, there are no monsters or supernatural like elements. Do I make it about knowledge? Do I make it about fear? Do I make, you know what I mean? Like there are a lot of themes that are available to me. And I really kind of wanted to nail down more so about the idea of, you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know.
I mean, just thinking about what you're talking about right now, my suggestion would be to keep it as close to home as possible. So like, don't go into like philosophical territory. Don't go into like universal kind of questions where it's like the atheism thing. I kind of think, oh, okay, I would get very easily tuned out because I'm like, I thought we were gonna have a horror movie here, and not like to me, I'm like, oh, this sounds like A24 territory, and I'm immediately like resistant, right? Whereas maybe it'd be better if you're gonna have a conversation, have it be something that can be within the realm of just day-to-day life. So like, example, social media is one particular venue. Although, I mean, there are other movies have done. I feel like Scream, the most recent Scream movie, kind of ran around that territory. But there are other ideas that I aren't popping up to me at the moment. But like, there are other ways that you could go around talking about that in regards to just in dealing with that sense of how firm is reality, which is what I think you're kind of talking about.
Kind of.
Because we deal with that on an everyday kind of basis too, right? Like,
is this really happening?
Yeah.
Like you find yourself in situations, like somebody takes their pants off in the grocery store, and the first thing you do is you look at whoever you're with, or just the people around you, going, "Did this guy really just take off his pants in the checkout line? What is happening?"
I feel like what you just said, like, I think that would be the venue to look down if you want to elaborate on that topic or on that theme, because there's also a lot of humor that's available to that, which can be sort of a way to.
That's something else I've been toying with, is putting humor in that scene, because we just had a scare scene, which I don't really think the audience will be scared about that scene, but the comedy will be a nice variety, palate cleanser, if you will.
Yeah, right. Because also you want to be able to get your audience sort of in a
relaxed,
relaxed before
safe
before you turn the engine on, right?
Yeah.
I was just thinking. Another thing that I was thinking about is, in order to hammer home a theme, you don't necessarily need to say it, or even you don't necessarily need to say it directly, but you can sort of spray it in a way. So, like, I was thinking about the Batman, right? The very first opening scene. What do we see happen through the Riddler's goggles? Like, what is he watching happen?
Is Halloween, ironically enough. Ave Maria is playing, and the little ninja that's the son of the mayor comes in and stabs him and kills him. Right. And he plays dead for him.
Right. And it's interesting because when I first watched that, the first time I watched that movie and I saw that scene, I wasn't entirely sure what was happening. which kind of made it interesting for me because I was like, wait, so is this an actual ninja in here? And then like
it is a Batman movie after all.
Exactly. Like this is within the realm of possibility of Batman. So like it became, towards the end of that moment, I was like, oh, okay, this is Halloween. This is his son trick or treating. But we see this, which I think is a theme that gets hammered a lot, is like basically children rebelling against their parents or coming to terms with their parents, because you literally see like the first thing you see in the movie is a son killing his father, even though it's play acting, but you see that repeated throughout the movie. Either killing a parent or coming to terms with their parents' death, or killing
the facade of perception that you have about your parents.
Yes, exactly.
Because Bruce very much thinks his father is a saint and his mother is perfect, and by the end of the movie he realizes it not so much the case. Like they aren't disparaged so much that they're terrible people, but it definitely his illusion of them from his memories as a child are definitely murdered.
Well, then even Riddler goes through that with Batman, because he has this idea in his head about how Batman's going to respond to him, finding out this, like he's put this elaborate plan together to reveal all this stuff. The Batman, like for Riddler, in his mind, like this is a love letter to this person who I think can help me solve this problem.
Yeah.
Albeit, Riddler's doing it in a totally psychopathic way, but nevertheless, like he thinks he's doing a net good for society, and he thinks of Batman as somebody who would respect this net good that he's doing. And Batman, looks at the total outcome of everything that's happened, is like, this isn't a good thing, and that shatters Riddler's perception of Batman. As the vigilante who would do anything to end corruption in Gotham, when in reality Batman is just trying to find a proper balance to everything that's happening, because everything is so fucking complicated. And he's the kind of person who's like, I will do everything within my ability to make sure people don't die in pursuit of the truth and in the pursuit of justice. Whereas Riddler's like totally the other way, where it's like, I'm willing to kill. I don't care about, like, those human lives can go if it means justice can be accomplished. So anyway, like, point being is like that theme gets established because we see it repeated throughout the script, and not necessarily because it's said outright. And I just came across this theme thinking about it like weeks later, but that's to me, that's how I think theme is unraveled. And I like that, because that gives me a deeper relationship with the film, because it's not just like a one and done kind of thing where the movie's over and I've gotten the theme and then I walk away from it and I don't ever really go back to it.
So my question to you is, you're postulating exemplifying the theme in a discussion between my characters without stating the actual theme.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right.
But at the same time, you also said that the discussion of like atheism was a little A24 and a little foofy, and that would have tuned you out. Isn't that kind of the same thing? Isn't spelling it out simply, like literally in a line of dialogue, isn't that the more simplified version of it, where it's not too foofy?
It for sure is. And I don't think that it's like, excuse me, I had to burp. I don't think, in buying myself time. My point is, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, like, there are several different venues that you can get towards. And so you could, like, it depends on what kind of horror movie you're doing, right? Do you want this to be I don't mean this term in a derogatory manner, but like a simple horror movie where you're getting in, you're here for the thrills and chills, and you're getting out? Or do you want elevated horror, or do you want some sort of like, social commentary on top of that? And that's sort of where you have to figure out like where to walk that tightrope, because that's where you establish all of your. That's where you establish how you approach theme, right? Because like, like a movie like 2001: A Space Odyssey never outright states the theme in a way where it's like you have people arguing and debating what is the theme of the movie, what does it all mean. People look at it as like this big mystery or whatever, and that's one approach to it. Or you can do Jurassic Park, where you explicitly state the theme, even go so far as having a scene where people argue about it, or you have it more exemplified through visual storytelling, right? Like what we were talking about with Batman. There are tons of different ways to do it. I think it's more at that point, it kind of becomes like, what would be your preferred route? You know what I mean? Like, what would be the route that would leave you happy,
Yeah.
and would leave you satisfied, where you're saying like, okay, I got the idea across. I'm happy with it. If other people don't get it, whatever. Like that's like I can live with that. Right?
Boy, we should have just started the podcast with you saying that, because that's let me tell you something. For anybody listening here, like that's the number one thing that you need to remind yourself about the most as an artist is, are you happy with it? Like, because I think a lot of us are very much chasing that. As I used to say all the time, all artists are just working out their shit. Like that's what we're doing when we're telling stories. Like, yeah, we're having fun, we're being creative and all this stuff, but we are working out our shit through this medium. And one of the things that I think we do readily forget, and I forgot up until this very moment when you said it, which is, do I like it or not? What would I like? What, you know what I mean? It's like you're sitting down at the dinner table at a restaurant, and the waiter is looking at you, and you have to tell them what you want. You know what I mean? You can't take a survey of the entire table and say, hey guys, what should I have? And go with that, because, you might not, like everybody else might want fish that day, and you're in the mood for a steak, but you don't know what to cut a steak, and they all say salmon. And then you're like, well, I guess I'll have salmon. Like, it's not going to be a good dinner for you. So I wish you had said that earlier. We could have saved 39 minutes.
Well, and what's weird too is like something I've been thinking about a lot in regards to the Trailer Park Warlock is.
That's what I was going to ask you is what have you been dealing with? Because this is a workshop episode. So if I can help you in return, please feel free to throw some problems at me.
The mystery is, because I'm making a story that's so specifically to things that I like, I have no fucking clue what my audience is like. Like, I have an audience.
Apparently they like you, Mr. 100,000 subscribers.
But like, I'm having more interactions with readers through like Discord channels and Twitter. And it's a very generalized and abstract way to sort of get to know people, right? And there's a lot of different personality types. The one thing that I feel like I am kind of picking up is like they have, a lot of them have a very internet personality, which is kind of my personality in a lot of ways too, where it's just like, yeah, these are probably people who are probably in outside of the internet life kind of shy, but wanting to be friendly with people and kind of nerdy, and don't necessarily, they're not like, they don't fanboy out, which I actually really appreciate. I think that's kind of awesome. I get, because I've had a couple of people like try and talk to me on the internet and get sort of fanboyish, and I'm just like, whatever, I don't care. Come on. Like had somebody call me a rock star, or like it's like, oh, I feel like I'm talking to a rock star. I'm like, dude, I'm just some guy.
No. You are a New York Times best-selling artist. Let's remind the audience of this for Christ's sake, since you're so afraid to tout your successes.
I'm just some dude drinking a Starbucks orange juice,
Who's had 5.6 million people read your comic.
Well, that's 5.6 million views. It's not the same number.
That's 5.6 million times someone has decided to click on your content. That's
Sure.
5.5999999 times more than somebody's decided to watch digits.
I understand. It's just for me, I'm trying to look at making this story as a conversation. And I think part of it is like, for me, it's sort of revisiting my childhood, because in my childhood, I made comics all the time, and I would make them in class, and I would I would draw like on sketch paper and then like staple it together and just put the book in class, and kids would read it and like talk about it. Or like sometimes I just made comics and the only person who read it was like my best friend, like from elementary school. Like he was literally the only other person who read it. And to me, that was always my relationship with art, is like there's like a couple of people who will read it and be like, oh, that was cool, I like that, and that's literally it. Like that's the interaction. And I am revisiting that because I feel like I think for me, that's like my purest form of making art. Like that's where I'm at my most purest, where I'm just like, I make something, I post it, somebody responds to it, and they like it or they don't like it, and I know. And that's it. Like that's literally it. And that gets more complicated, right? When you try and turn it into business and you think about branding and all this other shit. But that gets away from the original goal or the original motivator. And that makes it difficult when I don't necessarily entirely know the people who I'm interacting with and who I'm in this conversation with this story. Because it is like, this is just the way that I view it, is like I view art as a conversation, and I'm putting ideas out there, and then somebody gives me their response to those ideas. And if they have any further, how do they relate to those ideas? What does it make them feel? Do they hate it? Do they love it? Does it give them ideas that I hadn't previously had? And then that can turn into other things. And I'm trying to remember why I started this ramble, but but I think my original point is like, I don't want to know. I don't want to get to know these people just so that I can make the story attuned to them. I want to get to know these people because I want to understand. I think, and maybe this is totally wrong, but I think that it would help me understand something about myself a little bit better.
Right. You're working out your shit.
Yeah, I'm working out my shit. And because if I think oh, maybe that these people who are into my work might be a reflection of me in some way. Because if they if they like something that I make, it must be because there's something that in the work that they reflect with or they resonate with that we share in common. Maybe, but I have a lot of people who read it and are just like, well, I was confused by it and I read it a couple more times.
That's dedication though, man. Some people read something, get confused by it and be like, fuck this, I'm not trying anymore. See, so there's gotta be something to it where they're like, no, I gotta try and figure this out.
I'm definitely leaning on that, because why would somebody go back into it to read it again if it was bad, right?
I'm one of those people that would turn away from something that I don't like. I've tried to watch Memento. I can't tell you, maybe twice in my entire life, and 20 minutes into it, I check out and I'm just this is frustrating. I don't want to try.
Yeah, that's how I felt with Tenet. I'm just I want to go back to it, and then I'll watch 15 to 30 minutes of it, and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't
want to try. No, yeah. I get it. And that's not what you want as an artist, right? Yeah. For your audience to respond to. So, that's the kind of worry that I get concerned about when I'm trying to tackle the scene in Haunted, where I'm just I don't want people to tune out and be like, this is too foo-foo. And then I also I don't want people to go, this is too surface.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I need there needs to be an undercurrent. to carry everything, because otherwise it's just, it's a B movie. And I'm not dissing B movies, but I kind of wanted to make something a little bit more than that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a lot of, I mean, I always aim for the sky because I always feel like I like to say, if you aim for the stars, you might land amongst the moon, which is my kind of mantra, which is if I aim big, even if I fail, I'll still be okay. Like that's, what I mean? Sure. So when I think of Haunted, I'm like, I'm trying to make a classic. Go ahead.
Well, Jal, Scream is your favorite horror franchise, right? No?
Yes and no. So franchise.
Maybe I should restate the question. What is your all-time favorite, like singular favorite horror movie?
Horror movie or horror franchise? Because that's those are two different answers.
Let's do movie. Just singular movie.
Movie. Horror movie. This is a gun to my head type question, because there's 3 or 4 that I could definitely say.
What is the one what is your go-to when you're just like, I want to watch a horror movie right now and I don't want to think about anything. This is the one I'm going to watch no matter what.
9 times out of 10, it's Halloween 1978. The original Halloween.
Yeah. Do you, like, when you wrote Haunted, were you thinking about trying to make a movie that resonates with that feeling?
Yeah. Haunted came from a nightmare. I know I've told you this already. Like, there was a nightmare that I had, which I almost never have nightmares anymore. So when I had it, it stuck with me. And I was in the middle of writing a Christmas movie. And I was like, as soon as I'm done writing this Christmas movie, I'm writing that movie. And it got to the point where it nagged me so much so that I was just like, fuck this Christmas movie. And I sat down and I wrote 45 pages in one night, which is insane. I've never written that much in one sitting ever. Looking back on it, it was a lot of shit, but I laid a lot of bricks there that ended up still hanging around. And I don't know, I guess, yeah, there's a thing about the original Halloween that's heavy on atmosphere, which we know that I'm big on, that I really love, because, number one, it's oddly comforting to be in that Halloween atmosphere. Number two, as a business model, we've talked about this before, it's perennial. Like every year somebody's going to watch Halloween and you're going to make a couple bucks. Yeah. And they're going to tell somebody or show somebody the movie and they're going to buy it and they're going to, so you have a shelf life with that. And then I'm a weird holiday person. So I like the atmosphere of not just scary and creepy, but holiday atmosphere, the opportunities that it does, the way people act differently around holidays that they do than they would normally. You know what I mean? Even Christmas, people are much more generous to other people and friendly. Like, you pull up to a stop sign, signal the other guy to go first. You don't do that in the middle of June. You know what I mean? Like, people can be different around holidays. So, like, I like that people tweak and you can be exaggerated of yourself or a different side of yourself. You allow to take that chances in that variety of your personality. And all of those kinds of things kind of interest me. So like when I think about Haunted in terms of relating it to a movie, I love the idea of Halloween time because, everybody is not who they say they are. They dress up looking differently. Like it's this whole idea of facades and illusions and, having fun, scaring people, like all that kind of atmosphere resonates with me. But Halloween 1978 is very heavy on the fall atmosphere, even though it was shot in the spring. Then most of the leaves are still on the trees and green. But somehow when you watch that movie, it feels like autumn. Do you know what I mean? The score, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's definitely one of the primary inspirations visually on, I would say Haunted is like visually feels like Halloween 1978. Story-wise, I want it to kind of feel like The Exorcist and Scream. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Because lately I've been watching The Exorcist a lot, and not a lot of people rewatch The Exorcist. It's not one of those movies. A lot of people rewatch Halloween frequently. Yeah. A lot of people don't watch Exorcist on loop, and I have been, because there is a great subplot running through that. Like, everybody's like, okay, what's this movie about? The Exorcist. Little girl gets possessed by a devil, a demon, whatever you wanted to say, and spits up pea soup, and right, and it's scary. Like, it's very atmospheric, right?
Yeah.
Like, that room is very cold and breathy, and the lighting is very moody and all that kind of stuff. That's fun. But at the heart of it, the story is about a priest who has lost his faith. And he's thinking about giving up what it is, because he's also a psychiatrist, right? He's a psychiatrist who became a priest. And that is very much resonating with me right now, because the idea of haunted is, is this real? Is this not? The priest is very much on that same question mark, where he's like, this is a psychiatry problem. This isn't a religious problem. And that's one of the things that's tackled in the actual story. So for me, that's very interesting. And then, my love for Scream creeps in without even trying. The whole mystery of, because in The Exorcist, it's pretty clear when you sign up for The Exorcist, okay, it is a devil. It is a demon that's actually happening here. In Scream, there's that mystery of, I don't know who the killer is. I don't know, you know what I mean? I don't know who's going to die next. And I liked that tense, that I don't want to call it tenacity, because that's not the right word.
Oh, I mean, it
tension.
goes in Scream. It goes deeper than that too, because it's it's sort of similar to. It actually has some themes similar to the Batman, where it's like a lot of your illusions about the people that you know can be easily shattered, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And so, I mean, listening to what you're kind of talking, because Halloween's such a black and white in regards to the theme sort of film, where it's just like, I mean, the theme of Halloween's pretty much literally just like evil exists in the world and there's not much you can do about it.
Be very careful, because I've been waiting for someone to pick a fight with me about the theme of Halloween, because I know what it is. And a lot of people, I don't think, pick up on it, because there's a very sore thumb scene in Halloween. It sticks out to me that I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to.
Okay.
When's the last time you watched Halloween? 1978.
It's been a while. So.
Do you remember the scene where Laurie Strode is sitting in her classroom and Michael Myers is like across the street and she sees him outside the window?
Yeah.
And he's like creeping her or whatever like that. And then teacher calls on her to answer a question. She answers the question and she looks out the window and Michael Myers is gone. Right. Most people just see that as the stalking scene, right? To me, that's where the thematic premise is stated, because they're talking about fate. And Laurie Strode talks about it, and she talks about these two philosophers. I don't know, I can't remember what their names. Castings and somebody else. But she talks about these two different perceptions of fate, whereas someone thinks that it's very tied to religion, and your fate is very determined by what religion you celebrate, and the other one argues that fate is much more naturalistic, like earth, air, fire, water. It's an element. And the teacher, the scene ends with the teacher saying, yes, Samuel's definitely personified fate. Fate never changes, right? And that to me is the thematic premise, which is death. You are going to die. Right? You are going to die. It doesn't matter what you celebrate, what you do in life, you are going to die at some point. That is your
Michael
fate.
Myers just really represents basically the Grim Reaper. He's just death personified.
Correct.
Basically.
Because if you think back about Halloween, one of the little things that's running, it seems so nonchalant to a lot of people. And I don't even know if the storytellers were aware that they were embedding this, or maybe it goes back to one of our last episodes where I was talking about the perception is what you draw from your work. But Laurie Strode is very bookish, right? She's very, close to the vest. She spends a lot of her time babysitting and studying books and all that kind of stuff. Her two friends are total sluts. Like, they're drinking, boozing, partying, having sex, having like all this fun and stuff all the time. But at one point, one of the friends, probes her about a guy that she may like or whether she'll go to the dance. And she kind of admits to her friend, oh, I like this guy named Ben. And the friend turns around and tells Ben that Laurie likes her. And Laurie freaks out. Please tell him that you were kidding. Take it back. Don't do it. Don't put me in this position. To me, perceiving this under the idea of fate never changes, you are going to die. Yeah. Laurie is not living her life. She's very, you know what I mean? She's very much sheltering herself from living her life. She's not having fun. She's not enjoying herself. She's very, sheltered. And her friends are living their lives. Michael Myers is the Grim Reaper. And by the end of this movie, she realizes that death is going to come for her. And you know what I mean? Like, the idea is you need to start living your life. You can't just live in this little sheltered thing of studying all the time and just making money and doing a 9-to-5 kind of thing. You need to enjoy yourself. You need to take chances. You need to pursue the things that make you happy. And to me, that's when the thematic premise is stated in Halloween. And a lot of people, it goes right over their heads. Like you talked about, that feels to me, it was a little underbaked so much that nobody actually grabs it when they're watching the movie. Now, subconsciously, maybe they picked up on it and they like it for that reason. But to me, I don't think I've never met anyone else who could articulate it the way that I have. Not that I'm saying I'm ahead of the curve, but
and when I think about, that's interesting what you had to say about that. And something I like about that, because it seems to me like the way that scene unfolds is you are supposed to grasp that unconsciously, because those are two things that seem juxtaposed. You're not being told straight up, like, this relates to this, right? Like, Mike Myers doesn't relate to what's going on in the classroom. You put that together because those things happen, because those things happen one after the other, even though they seem completely unrelated. Which I personally really enjoy as a way of unfolding a theme or unfolding just a series of thoughts, right, within a scene, because that gives me as an audience member a lot of room to go into my own thoughts as to, like, what am I feeling when I see these things juxtaposed together. As another example, one time I got high and went to Planet Fitness and just like went on the elliptical machine and like put on like an Alan Watts lecture. So like Alan Watts was this counterculture philosopher who was really into like a lot of Eastern philosophies, especially like Taoism or Zen Buddhism. And so he had just had these long lectures where he's just kind of talking about society and how do we deal with like the really conformative aspects of society? How do we become more like ourselves and be an individual and all this other stuff? Well, I listened to that, and then there's like all the TVs in the background that are just playing whatever, right? Totally unsynced. And so there's like commercials, there's Food Network, there's Guy Fieri, there's, CNN. And I'm just listening to Alan Watts talk about this stuff. And there were these amazing synchronicities that would happen where there would be a commercial that would totally line up with like something that Alan Watts is talking about, like in regards to just like, how conformative society can be or whatever. And I just started laughing because it was just like one of those things where there's no logic for why these things should line up. But the human mind works in such a way that you can find those relations even if they don't exist, right? You can create those links. And so it's a double-bladed sword, right? Because you could unintentionally create connections that your audience, like, you don't intend your audience to make. Like, it is possible. I don't think this is the case, but it is possible that the scene you are describing, like you were saying, they may have unconsciously, like, they didn't intend for that to be
right
the thing that would line up. Although I think probability-wise, I would say, 90% that's probably what they were thinking when they made that scene. But nevertheless, you made that connection because you were looking at those two things juxtaposed together and then making that interconnection in the art. So, this is ultimately, I think for you in regards to Haunted, it kind of comes down to how important is it for every single person who goes into watching this movie to know exactly what your theme is. You know what I mean? Because like you might make this movie and then, you have a shit ton of people see it, and then the things they talk about might have nothing to do with the themes that you thought about. They might just think about a particular scene,
Yeah.
you know, or they might think about this one character or whatever. Like everybody goes into a story or a movie, and what they pull back from it is totally entirely preset by their original, like their original imprint going in, right? That's the part you have no control over. So, you know, I mean, I guess I'm kind of restating what I had already said earlier, but like you kind of have to go with what you feel happy with, because ultimately you have no control about like what the audience is going to come out of the movie with.
So it's basically what you're basically saying is like after this scene where they terrorized a little girl, that the next scene, you know, juxtaposed against the rest of the film where a girl is on a haunt where she's, you know, confused as to whether or not what's really happening or not. The second scene could be the two girls arguing about what the topics are, what the toppings are on the pizza that they're going to order. And somehow in that discussion of pizza toppings is the theme of where, you know, one girl's just like, surprise me. What do you mean surprise you? Like, you need to know what you want to order. Like, going back to that food analogy, but you know what I mean? Like, if I made a scene about two girls arguing about pizza toppings, suddenly you're suggesting that if I craft it in a certain way, someone will watch that scene and go, well, that's not really about pizza toppings. What they're really talking about is the theme, which is resonated here, here, and here later on in the movie when there's monsters. And
that's
shit.
the thing. It's like, that is, I'm trying to influence you because that's my preferred way of doing it.
No. And that's brilliant. That's great.
There are other ways of doing it, like Scream, like the most recent Scream movie, where you just upfront say what the theme, like you just have a scene where you upfront say what the themes are and what's going on in the movie. And Scream can get away with that, right? Like
they're supposed to do that, yeah.
Not every movie can get away with that.
Which ironically, in my opinion, retroactively thinking about it, because I've watched Scream quite a bit lately, now that I have it on Blu-ray. The Scream thing to do, which is what they did in 1996, which was be very meta and call attention to things.
Yeah.
So if they're doing like the soft reboot, the requel type thing, shouldn't they have gone the opposite direction and been non-meta? Right? Wouldn't that have been the actual Scream way to approach it? Like, is to go like revert back to a classic slasher formula where it's like, nobody's seen these movies. Nobody knows anything about what's going to happen to them. They all do dumb shit. Like, you know what I mean? They go investigate noises and shit.
I think it's too deep into Scream's brand, you know, where it's just like, if you don't do this, it's almost like you're leaving out the T-Rex in Jurassic Park.
Which, ironically enough, Rian Johnson probably would have done that, as they poke fun in the actual movie, but if Rian Johnson directed Scream, as we know from how he handled Last Jedi, I bet you he probably would have done that. He probably would not have done meta callbacks and all that kind of stuff. I think he probably would have tried that, and there would have been a section of the fan base that would have revolted as they did. Maybe that's what the filmmakers put that in there for, was like, hey, we know we should have done this, but you guys would have bitched about it, so we didn't. Maybe so.
That's the thing, is like, that's a whole other conversation about ultimately your conversation with the audience, right? Because once you've established that relationship with the audience, they really, it becomes a monetary issue, their expectations of what you're going to do, right? And how you buck those expectations. But that's where it becomes a really thin tightrope walk. But with Haunted, you're in the position where
I can be whatever I want to be to start. I mean, granted, trailers and advertising and shit like that will obviously point people in the right direction if we do that right. But no, you're right. The expectation is kind of wide open at the moment.
Right.
And
this is where you get to set the conversation up as you want. Right? Like I already foresee this as a problem, and I've probably talked about this before, but like I foresee this as a problem if I go into another series after Trailer Park Warlock. There's going to be people are going to have expectations of what's going to happen in a
it's going to be series. It's like, well, why isn't this more like Trailer Park Warlock? Yeah. It's just, you know, a different thing about whatever it is you might write about.
And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about, of like, okay, where do I make the appropriate balances in this? Where do I take some for myself and then some for my audience, you know, where I can meet them where they want to be, and I can meet myself where I want to be as the storyteller. Because I don't necessarily want to just do a sequel series and it's like, oh, it's another story about another warlock in a trailer park, but it's called something different. You know? Like, that's not really what I want to do. In the same way that, like, if I made a Star Wars sequel, I wouldn't necessarily want to like do another thing with like basically the Empire, but it's called something different or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, nevertheless, like, all that, anyway, I'm just repeating myself at this point, but like I was saying, like, this is where you get to figure out, you know, what is, and I guess that's ultimately the thing, right? Like, so think about what would make you most happy, and then also in your conversation with the audience, what parts of the conversation do you just never want to get into with them? Right? Like, that's one way of thinking about it.
That's a good way to narrow it down. What do I not want to talk about? Okay, exactly. That helps me figure out which way to go about this.
Like, what do you want to avoid in your conversation with the audience, and also, like, where do you want to obsess, basically?
Good to think about. That's food for thought. All right, we'll wrap it up there because I think we've gotten me to a good place. I think tomorrow I'll probably get some writing done, and then hopefully I will lock the script. But this has definitely been helpful to just have somebody to bounce it off of. I feel like
100%.
I feel like this is going to be something that we're going to do going forward. I'll probably do it more than you. But I feel like anytime one of us feels like we want to call for a workshop room, we should do that. And
I like this idea a lot.
I think that's a good thing. So if you're a listener out there, if you're one of our like 12 listeners, we are growing. If you want to be a guest, if you are an artist and you want to be a guest and you want to workshop a problem that you're having. Now, the only thing that I'm going to criteria it out as a specific problem. Don't be like, oh, I've got this whole thing, but I don't know where to start. Like, you know, listen to one of our earlier podcasts. But if you have a very specific, narrow problem that you're trying to tackle and you can't get over, we'd like to have you on. I think it would be a fun thing for me and Rainwater to help some other artists. I mean, that is one of the reasons why we do this podcast, is to kind of, you know, expand the discussion between artists about their craft and tackling issues, and not necessarily telling you how to do something or what to do, but guiding you on how you can do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and also just expanding the conversation. The conversation on the conversation, because every single person who's making a piece of art, they're having their own conversation with their audience. And, you know, in these workshops, I love this workshop idea, and I'd love to, just to mirror what Jao is saying. Like, I would love to be able to talk with y'all about any problems that you're having as a storyteller, as an artist, as somebody who's just trying to figure some things out, because we all come across that at some point where we're just like, I don't know what to do right now with this situation. So anyway.
So if you need to get out at us, you can get at us at I'm the Anjow, TheAnjow on Twitter. And you are Matthew J. Rainwater?
At Matt J. Rainwater on Twitter. Yeah.
Just Matt, not Matthew.
Yeah.
Okay. Shoot one of us a DM. You can add us, calling all artists. If you have a problem, and we know you do, and you're willing to come onto the show and talk about it with us, we will be more than likely to even hear what your topic or what your story is about, what your art piece is about, which we all know all artists love to do. And, you know, we'll try and workshop it with you. And we're more than happy to do it as fresh eyes without agenda. And I think that's the real kicker, is that when we talked about critique in the past, I know I brought this up, but a lot of artists instinctively try to mold when they're guiding with critique. They try to guide an artist towards what they would do. Whereas I feel like me and Rainwater, especially after this discussion with Rainwater, are going to try to help you figure out what you want to do. Especially because Rainwater literally said that to me about an hour ago. But that's the important thing, is figuring out what you want to do, and we want to help you get to that particular thing instead of saying, well, I would blah, 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 blah. Not that I'm saying I wouldn't have a great idea or Rainwater wouldn't have a great idea, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like art grows when artists do that. I don't think artists grow, and I don't feel like art grows.
I 100% agree with that. Like, because I think it's easy to get into a mindset when you're, especially if you're an artist starting out, to be like, what is the secret, right? Like, what secret do you have that you could tell me that would change everything? And it's like, that secret might only apply to me or to whoever. Like, you have to figure out what your secret is. All that I can do is really help you sort of uncover that and unravel that, because it is, I think for a lot of artists, it does start off as kind of a mystery to them. Which, that happens to everybody and everything, but like, unraveling that mystery over time is what allows you as an artist to sort of grow and find new venues. So.
That's true. All right. So it's out there. If you're interested, you're welcome. Reference this podcast number, shoot us a DM. So even if it's like a year from now and you're just finding out about us, you can reach out to us. And if we are still doing this podcast, knock on wood, I hope we are, feel free. And we'd love to have you on, and we'd love to help you work out your problems as best we can. I'm not, promising we'll solve it, but usually just having that bounce board, that workshop room, and fellow artists to talk to that are not going to judge you or the work for having the problem, we're here. We are going to be your art psychiatrists, I guess. That's the way to describe it.
Yeah, I think that is the best way to describe it.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Take care.
Later.